The wind knows. They say the wind here never dies, that if you stand alone in these canyons long enough, it'll start to talk to you. Whispers that scrape the back of your neck, carry secrets older than the bones buried underfoot. The textbooks call it Quetzalcoatlus northropi, the biggest thing to ever ride the sky. A pterosaur so massive it could look down on trees the size of cathedrals. That's the science. But the locals don't just see bones, they see a god. Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent who carried the sun and taught people how to live. They say he still moves through these canyons when the wind shifts, hunting shadows that don't belong. I've been tracking these stories for weeks. Strange kill sites, claw marks 30 feet up on sandstone walls. No one stays out here at night. They say if you see the shadow pass overhead, you're already prey. Some people come here to dig up the past. I'm here to find out if the past ever really died, or if it just learned to fly when no one looks up long enough to see it coming. This is the Cryptid Atlas, and this is Quetzalcoatl's shadow. Part 2: Arrival into the canyon. You don't find these canyons on a tourist map. They're tucked into the badlands of Coahuila, northern Mexico, a land of red dust and sun-cracked rock that can swallow you whole if you stray too far off the old herder trails. I left the last village at dawn, before the old man could finish telling me not to go. Their eyes followed me to the edge of town, like they'd already written my name among the bones. But that's the thing about stories that hang around for centuries. They're there because no one was reckless enough to chase them down. My boots sink into pale dust as I hike deeper. Every so often I pass a rusted fence or a hand-painted sign, warning of landslides. Some claim this place is just unstable terrain. Easy to blame shifting stones when cattle go missing, when goats are found picked clean, when you swear you hear wing beats above a canyon that hasn't seen a plane in years. I pull out my field journal, thumbing through old sketches, fossil records, pterosaur wingspans measured against football fields. It's all here, the parts that make sense in the daylight. But this wind, the stories etched into the canyon walls, they don't fit into neat diagrams. Tonight I'll set up camp on the high ridge. If the wind wants to talk, I'll be here to listen. Part 3: The Facts, Fossils and Myths. By lantern light, I spread out my notes and old maps on the canyon floor. The wind rattles the pages like they're alive. Quetzalcoatlus. The name sounds like a spell, but it's science. A pterosaur that ruled the late Cretaceous skies, bigger than any bird we know today. When paleontologists found the first bones in Texas in the 1970s, they laughed at how impossible it seemed. A wingspan stretching 10, maybe 11 meters. Hollow bones light enough for flight, strong enough to break bone on landing. But you can't talk about Quetzalcoatlus without talking about Quetzalcoatl. Long before any fossil was named, the people of these canyons painted feathered serpents onto cave walls. They told of a god who moved between earth and sky, who brought maize, fire, the calendar. A god who died but always promised to return when the world needed a breath of wind strong enough to shift the sun. I've been tracing reports that don't fit inside the museum glass cases. Shepherds whisper about massive shadows gliding above the ridgelines. Goat herders find carcasses picked clean, the rib cages snapped like twigs. No drag marks from predators, no signs of scavengers. Some blame drug runners using drones to scare people off. Some blame the wind. But if you stand here long enough, you start to notice. The cliffs echo in strange ways, and sometimes the silence feels heavy enough to knock the breath right out of your chest. I record the coordinates, old codices, satellite maps, eyewitness sketches, 1 page of my atlas for the bones, 1 page for the feathers that textbooks can't explain. Part 5. First Signs, the Echo. By dawn, the wind drops enough for me to move deeper into the ravine. The rock here feels ancient, brittle red sandstone scored with claw marks that could be centuries old, or fresh. I press my hand against one. It's longer than my forearm. I follow the ridge down to a dry riverbed, where shepherds swear they hear bones crack at night. There's a drag mark in the dust, a shallow groove that cuts between scattered goat bones snapped clean at the spine. No prints from wolves or big cats, but when I look closer I find something else, a footprint. It's not quite bird, not quite reptile. 3 long toes, talon tips pressed deep into the mud where the last storm carved a small pool. Too big to be a condor, too precise to be a trick of erosion. I stand up fast. The air shifts, a gust strong enough to rattle the dry brush and push grit against my pack. I scan the ridges above me, searching for movement. For a second, the sun catches something in the corner of my eye. A flash of shadow that blots out the canyon wall. There and gone again. Like a dream that wakes you up gasping. I reach for my camera. Nothing but wind and the low creak of old rock. But the print is real enough under my boots. And where there's a track, there's always more to find. Part 6. I climb higher before the light fades, boots slipping on loose shale. Every switchback feels like a choice I can't undo. Up here, there's nowhere to hide, if something decides you're worth hunting. At the canyon's edge, I send up my old drone, its blades cuffing against the wind. I watch the feet on my cracked screen. Scrubland, rust-colored ridges, the same endless horizon that swallowed more than a few fossil hunters who thought they knew better. Then I see it, just for a heartbeat. A shape drifts across the frame, massive, gliding low. No engine noise, no steady drone hum, just a dark curve of wings that look too thin, too flexible to belong to anything mechanical. I swing the camera around and try to catch it with my own eyes. For a second, the sun flickers behind it, a shadow so wide it erases the canyon floor in its passing. And then it folds into the rocks like smoke. My pulse is hammering so hard I can't hear the drone's return beep. I look down the cliffside and spot fresh drag marks on the ledge below. More bone fragments scattered like breadcrumbs, some so clean they gleam under the last rays of dusk. Every part of me wants to chase it deeper into the dark. But there's something about these canyons, they don't want you to find what you're looking for. Not all at once. I jot a single note in the margin of my field journal. Shadow passes overhead. Wingspan impossible. Watch the ridgelines at dawn. And I keep my boots planted where the ground still remembers the shape that just passed by. The shape that shouldn't exist. Part 7. I break camp before dawn. I don't sleep much out here, not when the wind carries wing beats that never quite resolve into ordinary birds. Back at the ridge, I sit cross-legged on an outcrop that looks down over the dry riverbed. In the pale morning light, the world feels stripped bare. Like if I squint hard enough, I'll see the seams that hold the old stories together. I open my field journal, thumb through the pages I've marked with torn strips of cloth, bones, fossil sketches, petroglyphs of a god with feathers instead of scales, and now a rough silhouette sketched in pencil, broad wings tapering to knife-edged tips, a beak long as my forearm. I press a fresh feather into the page, one I found half buried in the sand near the drag marks. It's black and white, thicker than any hawk's, too pristine to have weathered here for centuries. Locals say the feathered serpent brings storms and secrets, blessings and ruin. Maybe this is just a bird that learned to hide where people don't bother to look anymore. Or maybe there's more to the god than the bones buried in our museums. I close the journal and tie it shut. The canyon below is quiet now. But I know better than to think it's empty. One page at a time, that's how an atlas grows, and some pages you only write if you're willing to stand right where the wind could carry you off, with whatever watches from the shadows. The legends we whisper in the dark, sometimes they whisper back. This is the Cryptid Atlas. One page down, 1,000 more waiting in the shadow.